All right. Welcome back. Penn State wins 21-7. We'll give people some time to come in if we have anyone. It's a late game, so we'll see if anyone's around to catch the live stream. If not, obviously this is being recorded. So thank you for watching this either later Saturday night or certainly early Sunday.
They got some West Coast viewers, checking this out.
Hopefully so. We'll see if anyone joins, but if not, welcome to all who are watching, whether it's live or not. We'll give people some time to join in. Actually, let me update that banner as well.
Yeah, we got 6 people now.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. Subscribers. That's why you subscribe. You get notifications. That way you can see when we're going live. Tim, how about you? That was a rough game. I got myself a little drink here. I feel like I deserve this one.
I'll probably be. I'm having water right now, but I may actually end up having another alcoholic beverage after we sign off here, just to bring myself back down, and maybe while I type up my position grades, which will go up tomorrow.
It's very funny. I feel like the, obviously I love the primetime kicks, but man, it kind of does suck just waiting around all day, especially not that I was like greatly worried about this game, but especially when it's, a big game where you're not necessarily sure what's going to happen. I feel like 3:30 is the sweet spot of, all right, you can kind of ease your way into the day, but yet, you're not just waiting around all day and then having to do this at 11 o'clock. Cause yeah, it's tough to turn the switch off then when it's like, all right, well, time for bed.
Well, the good news is I think this is the only time we're going to be doing this year.
Yeah.
Barring a playoff. I mean, of course, I guess if you get to the playoff, then maybe their first round game will be an evening game, but I digress. This is probably going to be only 7:30, primetime game. I think everything else is looking at noon or 3:30.
All right. I think that we can get started. So obviously, if you're here, you know what happened, but Penn State wins against Illinois 21-7 in what was a very, very weird game before we tried to save it all for the show itself. But as we were, Tim and I were logging on here, we were kind of saying, I can't really remember a game, at least in recent years, that Penn State has had that kind of played out that way. I think back to honestly, some of those late Paterno years, like the 2005, 2018, specifically 2008, because it's like you knew they had the high-powered offense and that they could put up points if needed, but yet they had such a good defense that it wasn't always necessary, and sometimes the offense would get a little conservative, and I feel like that's kind of what played out today. So, Tim, what are some of your just main quick thoughts on the game? Were you ever worried? Because I'll be honest with you, I don't think I really ever was greatly worried that Penn State was going to lose that game. It's tough to be worried when Penn State was running the ball the way that they were.
You say that, and for a good portion of the game, I wasn't worried. But when Penn State was stuck at 14 points, and when it still was 14-7, well into the fourth quarter, and despite the fact Penn State was moving the ball well, especially on the ground, I definitely had some concerns creeping in. It certainly had some feeling of, the 2021 Redux, except this time, Illinois wasn't able to do anything, offensively in the second half. I mean, kudos to Tom Allen, made some real adjustments at halftime. But, if you had told me Illinois would score on its first possession of the game and make it look relatively easy and then get shut out the remainder of the game, I would have thought you were crazy. But that's precisely what happened. To be fair,
both sides, right? Penn State on their first offensive series. I mean, I think
Penn State exactly. Penn State responds back, and then I'm thinking after those, I'm like, all right, we might have ourselves a shootout like I was kind of anticipating, but ends up being this low-scoring defensive struggle, which didn't necessarily feel like a low-scoring defensive struggle, at least with Penn State's ability to move the ball. It was just, it's a bizarre game. I think it definitely didn't help, though, that Penn State has a major field goal kicking problem. Sanders Sahadak, unfortunately, missed on a couple field goals, and then Penn State actually went for it on a 4th and 3, like around inside of Illinois 25, and then they throw an out route to Julian Fleming, but he just gets wrapped up in the ankles and isn't comes up about a yard short. But of course, that's an area though where if you have a good kicker or kicker you have enough faith in, you just trot him out there and make it 17-7, and all right, at least now you're up 2 scores on Illinois, and the pressure really gets ratcheted up on them. But as it is, I was getting nervous in the 4th quarter because it's still stuck at 14-7, and even though the defense was doing a tremendous job, you're thinking to yourself, I'm thinking to myself at least, they're just one broken play or just one busted coverage from this game being tied up. So
no, that's true, and especially after Zahedak's second miss, which I was honestly a little surprised that they even went back to him because it was a 40. I think that one was 40 yards.
41 yards. Yeah, that was a little strange. They were trying him again from that.
And
they tried it from like 30.
It seemed like they almost played for it too, because it was 3rd and 7, the down prior, and they went back to the Tyler Warren package, which, yes, I know that obviously you can pick up 7 yards, but that's the type of move of let's see if we can get 3, 4, 5 yards and then go for it. And it didn't. I mean, obviously they didn't go for it. Maybe that was like a thought in their mind, but it seemed like they pretty quickly went with Zahadak again. And yeah, I mean, not that Zahadak, I mean, maybe that is the main takeaway. That's kind of where Penn State is at this point, where it's like, I think the main takeaway should be the defense. They stepped up really big. Like we were saying after that first drive, I think we were all, worried about what was going to happen. And to Tom Allen's credit, because I wasn't the biggest fan of the Tom Allen hire, and I would have been, if they would have gave up, 24 plus points tonight, I would have been the first one here that would have, been saying how, I'm not a fan of Tom Allen. So credit to him for him and the defense for getting it together. But yeah, the kicking issue is like, it's unfortunately more important than it probably we would hope it to be, just because I think that this, like you were saying before, this is probably a game that Penn State, one, can coach a little bit differently if you're confident in your field goal kicker, and two, you're obviously going to be able to score more points. So certainly don't want to like belabor the whole field goal kicker thing, just because I think there's a lot more stuff with Penn State, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Abdul Carter, Zane Durant that we're going to talk about. But just to touch on the field goal kicker for a second, I understand that Sanders Zahadak is, has the most quote unquote talented leg, and they chart all these things in practice, and I'm sure he's the best that they have. If you can't make him in the game, and to this point in Sanders' career, he has not proven that he's able to make him in the game. I think he's now 3 for 9 for his career, and that doesn't even include like a missed extra point. So yeah, we saw Ryan Barker kick the point after for Penn State's last touchdown, and I think that he will be the guy moving forward, just because.
I mean, I'm sorry, we gave him a chance, and it looked like for a moment, what was it, against Bowling Green? I think he nailed a 40-yarder against Bowling Green. He had a couple and looked like, maybe we might see a Sam Ficken style redemption arc for him, but unfortunately, when the spotlights were the brightest, he wilted under the pressure. It's clear at this point he's just not consistent enough, not reliable enough, and in those situations where they weren't able to punch it in the end zone, but you're in field goal range, you got to have a kicker you can rely on, at least get you some points. I mean, it feels like they probably left at least 9 points out on the field. If I guess we're going to count the failed 4th down conversion, which I think they would have kicked that too if they felt confident in anybody.
I think that's a 50-50 spot. I understood going for it, and I mean, even the play call itself, you get Fleming out in the flat, and
Well, to be fair, I think they're trying to, like, it was a real chance to step on their throats there. I think would have had a first down inside the 20 if he got it, and so I guess I understand that, but I think they left at least 6 points on the field, we'll say, and so actually those 6 points would have made all the difference between covering and not covering the spread.
the first fourth down that Illinois had on their last drive, when it was, Penn State could have got the ball back with I don't know exactly how much time I think it would have been. I think it would have been 50 seconds or something like that. But Penn State would have been within field goal range already. And I was curious if Las Vegas Franklin would have came out and would have been covers there if we want it. But I doubt that would have been the case. Anyway, enough about the kicker. Yes, kicker bad. Hopefully Ryan Barker comes in and is just make, from 40 and in. We're not asking for a lot, just make 40 and in. But I think the main takeaway from tonight and the best thing that we saw from Penn State was the defense stepping up, a defense that had a lot of questions coming into it. I think that, both you and I, and if you ask Penn State fans around, the internet, around the country, where was the faith and belief in offense or defense? I think it was definitely more offense coming into this game. And today was a big step forward for the defense. Abdul Carter, 1.5 sacks, 3.5 tackles for loss. I have some thoughts on him that we'll discuss in a bit. Saint Durant had by far his best game as a Penn State Nittany Lion. Only credit for 1 sack and 2 tackles for loss. That was the type of game where if it would have said that he had 2 sacks and 6.5 tackles for loss, I would have believed it, because it felt like he was in the back.
But he also played a role in other guys picking up. I mean, just by getting pressure on quarterback, or just beating his man.
Yeah,
he was blocking against. So,
but as a whole, the Penn State defense, not to go through everybody, but they had 7 sacks, 13 tackles for loss. You get the interception with AJ Harris, and what should have absolutely been
a pick six, but Simon Tracy.
I appreciate the
brain fart moment. Just does an unnecessary block in the back when AJ Harris was already clearly outrunning the nearest tackler. Would have had a pick. Would have put the game away sooner. Although it would have given Illinois the ball back with more time on the clock and a chance to maybe.
It just was a very fun moment that was taken away. I'll be honest with you, Tim. I did take my shirt off when they had the pick six, so I sadly had to put it back on. But I do appreciate Tracy's, just the absolute hustle to get in that position to even make that block in the back. And it's just a young guy that's playing in front of 110,000 and really playing for the first time since he didn't play a ton last year. And I think I got caught up in the moment and can understand that. But
once you hit 100 subscribers, you can do it on the show here. So
we'll see how many we got tonight. But anyway, so you get 7 sacks, you get 13 tackles for loss, you get the interception. Abdul Carter at the end ends up getting the forced fumble as well. So finally, we're able to see a little bit of the chaos as we've been asking for from Tom Allen's defense. So Tim, I'll let the stage be yours. What do you want to talk about defense? Do we want to talk more about Saint Durant? Do we want to talk about Abdul Carter? Do we want to just talk about them in general? Where do we go from here?
I think just starting maybe just from a 40,000 foot view. I mean, obviously we mentioned before, first drive, first possession of the game for Illinois, they marched down without too much trouble, get an easy touchdown. Of course, everyone's melting down on the message boards, and I don't really read the comments section for the in-game threads on BSD until after the fact, but I'm sure there was plenty of melting down from the usual set of trolls, especially. But and again, there was I think they were melting down again towards the end of the half when it was 7-7. Illinois has it 1st and goal at the 2-yard line, and I think because of it was a penalty. I forget what kind of penalty it was. It was a one that was maybe a bit ticky-tack. But I had to pull it up in the play-by-play here if I can do it.
Yeah, there was a lot of
there was a lot of bad refereeing in this one.
I'd have to go back and rewatch that first drive and kind of remember all the penalties, which, by the way, not to break you off, Tim, but Georgia was up 34-33, and now Bama just scored a touchdown. So in case you're wondering about that, now Bama is back up 41-34. When I logged on here,
they were it looked like it was over in halftime, essentially.
I think it was 33. I could have sworn I think it was 33-21. Bama was up. So sorry, but we don't have to
But
talk about.
tell me that I am logging into my YouTube TV right now as we speak, so I can.
We are just vibing here right now. Penn State wins.
There's a lot going on, folks. But yeah, just to go back though to that towards the end of the half, the first and goal to 2 after a defensive penalty. Looks like they're going to punch this one in, and offense will get the ball back with a chance to perhaps tie it up for halftime, or maybe kick a field goal. Well, no, they weren't going to kick a field goal. Who are we kidding? But maybe a chance to score a tying touchdown, and then lo and behold, it was a bad snap. I was hoping that Penn State could have pounced on it, but just no one was really in position to do so. But they do lose about 10 yards from that. And then on third and goal from like the 15, they end up, Luke Altmaier commits a intentional grounding penalty just while avoiding a sack. And so then that backs them up around like beyond their 20, the Penn State 20. So they're kicking a 40-yard field goal now. And then they get a false start penalty on the field goal. So now it's a 45-yarder, still straight down the middle. And this is a kicker who's definitely been better than Sanders Zahadak has this year. So you're thinking, all right, probably should still nail this. But nope, he just like just pushed it to the left. And they go from looking like they were going to punch it in and go up by a touchdown before halftime to now we're tied. And here's Penn State now with a chance to maybe take the lead before halftime. Of course, it didn't happen, but I thought to myself at the time, this is something that could very well bite Illinois in the behind when it's all said and done. And, that is what ended up happening really, because Penn State beginning of the second half, they go downfield, score a touchdown, and eat up a lot of clock in the process too. And then what does the defense do? They come out, get a 3 and out. Penn State gets the ball back. They eat up some more clock. Now I know they didn't score again until final 2 minutes of the game, but I my other point was the other thing I was thinking of saying on here was that it's almost like James Franklin or beat Brett Bielema at his own game, winning the time of possession battle, running it down their throats. I mean, that's like quintessential Bielema ball right there. Just again, it showed up everywhere, but on the scoreboard. And, if it showed up on the scoreboard, this is a game Penn State wins in a blowout. They cover that 17.5, or I think it went up to as high as 19-point spread. But, I really think winning that time possession battle, just being able to have these long sustained drives, and then the defense just practically shutting down Illinois' offense in the second half, forcing 3 and outs, or maybe a move of change just once before punting. That left Illinois' defense gassed. And eventually Penn State was finally able to push through and put the game away with another touchdown finally. But it's just going back to what I was saying, bizarre game. I don't know. Do you want to talk about individual defensive guys since I've kind of rambled on here?
Yeah, but just to kind of go off something you were saying, I think for me, you mentioned Illinois gets down first and goal at the 2, and Franklin's already burning timeouts, right, because they want to get the ball back. But I think it was also, just the idea of, Illinois is probably going to score here. Let's conserve, make sure that we keep time so we can get the ball back with as much time as possible so that we can score. I think for me, that is kind of where I became like not worried with the game in a way. Like I was, once they had that, the snap that brought them back, and then the intentional grounding and all those issues, and the fact that they had first and goal at the 2 and did not walk away with points. Like as much as Penn State had a lot of dumb penalties and was shooting itself in the foot, and obviously our field goal kicker issues. For Illinois on the road, you can't get first and goal at the 2 and have a chance to, at least get a field goal.
Absolutely not. That was, that was a real, if you're trying to pull big ups on the road, you can't do that to yourself.
Like I just think at Penn State, right? Like if Penn State's on the road at Ohio State, and I don't know, next time I think we play Ohio State next year on the road, and it's 7-7 going into at the end of the second quarter and Penn State's first and goal at the 2 and they can't get any points, it's like, well, that's a killer. Like it changes everything. So even though Penn State, they get the ball back and they're not able to go down and get points, it was a major net negative, or net positive rather, that it was only 7-7 going into the half. I think Penn State, from there, you had faith that they would come out and honestly just the talent went out, because Penn State was, I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but I know both Katron and Nick Singleton were averaging over 7 yards per carry going into halftime. So if everything is equal, 0-0 when you're coming out of the half, and Penn State has such an advantage running the football, whereas Illinois really could not run. Fagan had that 134-yarder, but other than that, it only averaged like 2.5 yards per carry. You feel pretty good for Penn State. So I think that's kind of where I was at with, especially just that whole set of things. Let's talk about Abdul Carter, just because, well, even while I was saying all this, before it was 1.5 sacks and 3.5 tackles for loss. Now it's 2 sacks and 4 tackles for loss. So I think that first sack that he tripped the guy up, they now gave him the full sack for that. But it's still, I see a lot of, should they put Abdul back at linebacker, just because that seems to be where the defensive end thing isn't quite working out. He of course had an offsides tonight. He has to have 2
offs. I mean, he's still, this is just a recurring problem now.
But I think the issue with the defensive end versus linebacker thing is that really where he's most confident is when he is a defensive end or a linebacker that's just simply spying the quarterback and not like really doing anything else. Like even his spying of the quarterback, like the sacks that he had, like the last second at the end of the game when he forced the fumble, he's basically just a defensive end that's, basically coming after the passer, but just keeping an eye on the quarterback. Again, just spying the quarterback. And it's like not like really a real position that you can play, for 90% of snaps. Like it's when the defense, when they're in a throwing situation. So I don't really buy the idea of like having. I still think the best Abdul Carter is the one that is going after the quarterback, or one that is moving towards the line of scrimmage. And if he's playing linebacker, at some points he's going to have to drop back. You can't just constantly have him only just be like a spy and acting as like a quasi DN type thing. So that's my only concern with Abdul, despite the fact that these numbers look really good. His pass rushing, what do I want to say, repertoire at defensive end isn't a whole lot. He really runs himself out of plays, and I don't know. I
the same problem he had at linebacker, running himself out of plays. So.
And it's a good problem to have when it's like, oh, our All-American, probably first-round pick who had 2 sacks and 4 tackles for loss. I'm like, I don't know. But I just know what a lot of the conversation, and just based on what I saw on Twitter, obviously during the game, and what it's going to be about, what is his best role. And I just don't think that – I don't know what it is, because his best role is as a QB spy on 3rd and longs, which is just not a real position that you can play all the time. But
By the way, talking about defense, how about Kobe King? He was a dude tonight.
I was talking to former BSD staff writer Clay Sawyer-Tig during the game, and Kobe's biggest issue is that he wears 41. It's just not a cool number. He needs to get, if he was like a 40, right? If he was out there looking like Kabinda, or he was wearing even like, I don't know, even like 32 looks cooler.
Well, is number 8 or 24 taken for the defense? So
24 is Tamir Robinson and 8 is Dakari Nelson. So both linebackers, because they're smart.
Maybe there's got to be a switch. Maybe
seniority. Yeah. Anyway, but Kobe King, really good. He had 1 sack and 1 tackle for loss. It was just you can just go down the list of guys on defense, and Tony Rojas, 1.5 tackles for loss. He had a couple nice plays. Jalen Reed, fantastic as always. He had 9 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. AJ Harris obviously had that super impressive interception that he basically jumps off his man, knowing that it's going to be that slant there. If there's one thing I will say about the defense, I think they were fantastic, and they were just making sure that they weren't getting beat deep, and if they wanted Altmaier to have to dink and dunk his way down, they were willing to do that. But I do wish that they were able to force turnovers just a little bit easier, because Yeah, watching Altmaier, like it's one thing to watch him against, Nebraska or these other teams, than watching him against Penn State, obviously, when I have a vested interest. He is a one-read quarterback, and that is it. If that one read is not there, he can't do a whole lot. So that would be my only thing with the defense. That I don't want to say
It seems
annoying.
like they realized that at a certain,
Yeah.
definitely by the second half, and they were, all over that. So he wasn't able to really hit his receiving targets in stride like he was at the very beginning.
Yeah, no, I know Sakari Franklin had 4 receptions, I believe, in the first quarter, and he ended with 4 receptions. They couldn't get Pat Bryant going. He only had 2 receptions for 33 yards, and they tried to hit him late, or they tried to hit him deep late a couple times, but just weren't able to connect. But no, I think once again, I definitely would have came on here if Penn State gave up a lot and would have complained about the defense and would have complained about Tom Allen. I still don't know how the USC game still worries me just a bit. Just really strong passing attacks still worry me. But I think all in all, this was a good game. And I think we saw in the second half, just again, that they can create that chaos. They had the 7 sacks, they had the 13 tackles for loss. It seems like some of Tom Allen's blitzes were finally getting home, and were finally effective. So.
Well, you remember the 2016 team was known as a second half team. Like I feel like
a little bit of it.
Tom Allen is a second half defensive coordinator.
Well, I heard during the broadcast that Penn State hasn't allowed 100 total yards in the second half yet this year. I don't know if Illinois was able to.
I don't care who the opponents have been. That's impressive.
Yeah, hey, I'll take. Give me. I love second half team stuff, especially if it's just going to be like second half defense. We'll take it. Anything else defensively? I mean, I think we hit just about everybody.
I think so. I we're just wish AJ Harris had gotten his credit for his pick 6. Was that stupid block in the back, but otherwise, great recovery after that opening drive, and also how they managed to hold firm, near their own goal line. I mean, part of that was self-inflicted by Illinois, but they also came up with some big-time plays to keep him out of the end zone and ultimately forced a missed field goal. So, like I said, I think that really turned things around too for the team. And so, but great night for the defense overall. I'm going to think about what grades I'm going to give to each unit right now, but they'll be pretty decent considering the final score. But how about we move over to the offense? We got a nice comment here from a reader. Bennett's Singleton averaging over 7 yards per carry into halftime. Why do you feel like we weren't leaning into the run more? I feel like they were passing more, which is necessary. I'm right there with you, Bennett. I was probably yelling at the TV to just run the damn ball in the first half when it was crystal clear that they had no answer from the get-go and they weren't going to have an answer. And yet there was one of the drives, we threw the ball 3 straight times, and I'm wondering, like,
it was the first Haydak. Yeah, the first Haydak miss.
Yeah, the first Haydak. Yeah, we went through it 3 times in a row. And I'm thinking, why is Andy Kolnicki going away from what was clearly working? So, but obviously, second half, as you saw, they really stuck to the ground and pound method and only threw it when it was truly necessary. So, good on Kolnicki for Coach K for making those adjustments. I mean, because you look at the, Penn State they threw the ball 21 times and then ran it 44 times. So, twice as many run plays as passing plays. So they definitely, made that adjustment at halftime and stuck to the ground. So it kind of had like an old school Penn State football feel to it, run the ball, play good defense.
Oh, Bama's going to win. Interception in the end zone.
No, I think you are just about slightly ahead of me. Oh, snap.
Yeah.
What a play.
Crazy. I can't believe Georgia even came back, though. I
saw it was 33-15 Bama, and then I had the quad box going on my TV. So with the Penn State game mostly I was paying attention to, but I did have the Bama game up in the corner. I was only just glancing at it from every now and then. So it seemed like Bama was going to run away with it. And then, I mean, good on Georgia for making it a game, but
it's maybe my most boomer take, but I don't like, I can't do the quad box. It's not that I don't like it. It's just, it's like, I'm only going to end up paying attention on these games. I'd rather just flip back and forth anyway. So
maybe it's better when there's not a Penn State game on. You just don't really care about zero.
For Penn State games, I have to completely focus on
Actually, I kind of did it because I was getting a little stressed. That's like my de-stressing method for a close game. Just pull up the quad box so I can at least maybe look at another game if I'm not liking what's going on with the Penn State game.
Anyway, getting back to Bennett's comment about running the ball. At halftime, Allen had 5 carries, Singleton had 6 carries. So obviously, Allen ends with 18 carries, Singleton ends with 16 carries. So yeah, definitely lean on the run way more in the second half. I believe, and this is just going off my own recollection, I think that Drew Aller had 14 attempts in the first half. He ends with 21. So yeah, they certainly committed to running the damn ball. We got to buy the hats, run the damn ball hats. In the second half,
I think 9 of 14 at halftime and finishes 15-20. So you do the math. He was 6 for 7. I mean, so he was really efficient in the.
What were your Drew thoughts, just as a whole? I thought that he, even on the first series of the second half, which ended up, Penn State scored. So like you said, he ended up being pretty efficient in the second half when called upon. Obviously, it wasn't a whole lot. It was not completely like Michigan last year with JJ McCarthy, where it was like you just run the ball every single time. But similar to that, I thought that he definitely looked a little frazzled. That like,
I think in the first half, like when he was misfiring on some open throws that he normally would make, and maybe he was a little amped up, or maybe Illinois' pressure was getting to him a little bit. But yeah, he looked a little bit off. Definitely his demeanor on his sideline wasn't good. Like, so that was a little concerning. But he obviously, he got it together. Second half, he looked more poised. It said 6 for 7. He only had 1 incompletion. And he also was able. He used his feet a couple times to pick up some chunks of yardage. Not as much as he did in some of the other games, but he did it when he needed to escape trouble. I mean, overall, he was efficient. Wasn't spectacular, wasn't bad. He didn't do anything to put his team in a hole. Unlike what Luke Altmaier did towards the end of the game with the interception. But
I guess I was just hoping for a little more, and not that.
Yeah, I think we all were.
But I don't think it's going to be even a top 25 unit in the country, and what I mean by frazzle, it just seemed like everything started in the second half. Everything, and again, he was 6 of 7, so like obviously he was fine. Like it's not the biggest issue in the world, but things just seemed like a little too sped up for him. And he, like, what really stuck out to me is the Amari Evans deep pass that ended up getting pass interference, but he threw it off his back foot for like no reason. He had time. He could have stepped into it and really launched it. And, with Drew's arm strength, I mean, that could have very well been a touchdown. And instead he didn't set his feet, threw off his back foot, and was just fortunate that it was pass interference because it was severely underthrown. So just like little
bit of tendency to underthrow Omari Evans on those deep balls.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are obviously 60, 65 yards down the field. So even with a guy like Drew, it's hard to really step into that. But I don't know. I just it's gonna be one of those things of I will need to rewatch the game just to confirm my belief. But just watching him in the second half, I feel like he was not. I feel like so much this year he was trusting his eyes, and it was very instinctual, and that followed then to his lower half with his feet, where he was stepping into throws and knowing where he was going to go with the ball and things like that. And I just felt like that wasn't completely the case. It just felt like he was a little frazzled. and just wasn't throwing as confidently, a little bit more dumping off and things like that, which is fine. He obviously didn't want to make the mistake, and just knowing the type of game that it was and how well Penn State was running the ball, not to do anything too crazy. He didn't need to win the game for them with big time throws, but just for where I think Drew is at or can be at, I don't know. I was just hoping for a little bit more than just 15 to 21 for 135 yards. It's just a little bit on the lower end, but those types of games will happen, and I understand that, especially if you're going to lean on the ground game like the way that Penn State did. Because yes, we can't have everything. We can't have Katron Allen and Nick Singleton run for 100 yards and then also expect Drew to throw it for 300 yards. So I understand I'm being a bit of a harsh critic in that sense, but what about
as long as we're moving the ball, and in some, one way or another. Although the interesting thing, they did have several explosive plays, but their longest play from scrimmage only went 20 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Like Illinois, I'll say it's kind of a credit to Illinois' defensive coordinator, Aaron Henry. They were very adamant about keeping everything in front of them. It was very bend but don't break. They were determined not to allow Drew to beat them over the top. And so they basically, basically like, hey, try and run at us or, just dink and dunk us to death. And Penn State was more than happy to oblige there. But just another interesting stat, considering how well they moved the ball, their longest play from scrimmage is only 20 yards. You don't typically see that either.
That's partially what I mean, though, especially in the second half when you're able to run the way that Singleton and Allen were. You would just hope that some things would start opening up a little bit down the field. And I think, like, for example, once again, that Amari Evans play could have been one of those plays where it's like, oh, that kind of changes the outlook of how Drew played. But again, I know you're the position grade guy, so I'm not going to tell you what I would, what you should give Drew, but I certainly think it was, a B performance. I'm not saying that he, it certainly wasn't like a failure.
It's actually what I've been thinking in my head, like a B level.
Just a normal B. He was fine. He didn't make any mistakes, and
B is good. I mean, it's not a bad grade.
Anyway, Trey Wallace, nice little game. Made some good catches. Tyler Warren as well. But like we were saying, there weren't a ton of big, huge plays, and I'd be curious to see the yards after catch for those guys because it doesn't seem. I would imagine that it probably wasn't a lot. So, yeah. All right. I think we're just about wrapping up here. Any other thoughts from the game? It's funny just looking at the stats and Illinois.
Yeah, I've been looking at the stats here. So I mean, obviously Penn State won the total yards battle pretty handily, 374 to 219. Illinois outdid them on the passing yards category, 185 to 135. But of course, the rushing is where, Penn State really outdid them, 239 yards for them compared to just 34 for Illinois. I mean, that was a key there. They were able to keep Illinois one-dimensional. They weren't, I mean, I know we talked on the Wednesday preview show that Illinois passes to set up the run, but they still rely on being able to have some semblance of a run game, and they didn't really have that outside of, I think there was one carry. Box score. There was one carry from Caden Fegan that went 34 yards, and that made up more than half of his total 64 yards. Just that one carry.
Other than that, average 2.5 yards per carry. So.
Yeah, you take that out. Exactly. And then, really nothing else besides him. So, again, that's credit to Tom Allen's defense. They weren't going to let Illinois have a balanced attack. They were going to obviously try to take away the pass game. And then, once they were able to keep a lid on that, it definitely spelled trouble for Illinois in the second half. So, but, credit to Illinois. They did not come in there intimidated. They had a plan. They executed as well as they possibly could, but the old saying from Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And they did punch first, but then Penn State landed a few blows that eventually knocked them onto the canvas, albeit that came later than we all hoped for. But, a win is a win. At the end of the day, Penn State's 4-0. All their hopes and dreams are still in front of them. It's on to UCLA next week. The big noon kick coming to Happy Valley for the first time this season.
Real quick for Illinois' remaining schedule, just because I had assumed that they had a tougher remaining schedule than I thought, but they have a bye next week. Then they host Purdue. I think we'd agree that's probably a win, right?
Yeah.
So that would be 5-1. They then host Michigan, which I find very interesting. That would be
an intriguing game. Because I'm still not that sold on Michigan. I mean, they're very one-dimensional offensively.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much longer they can keep getting away with that.
I'll be curious to see how they do outside the Big House, because again, that will be an Illinois home game. Not that Champaign's the toughest place in the world, but just something to keep in mind. They then have to go to Oregon. That's probably a loss. But then after that, home against Minnesota, home against Michigan State, at Rutgers, and at Northwestern. I think out of that Minnesota, Michigan State, at Rutgers, at Northwestern, can you get 3-1 out of that? Like, I don't think it's crazy to think that I don't want to say the best case scenario, but that Illinois can end with.
They could get 3 out of those 4 potentially.
And they'd
be
like
the one game
team.
I'd say the game I'd be least confident about
Maybe
is the one at Rutgers, actually, because Rutgers is they're a pretty physical team themselves, and that one is in Piscataway. But of course, I wouldn't discount. Minnesota gave some trouble to Michigan. I mean, they came back and made it a game.
I feel like it says more about Michigan than Minnesota, though.
This is where it's possible. Yeah, I'm still not. I'm not sold on Minnesota by any means. I think they're pretty mediocre at best. Michigan State. I mean, they're okay, but I think if it's at Champaign, I think Illinois can beat them. So Northwestern is just bad this year. Rutgers have given me a pause. I mean, Oregon, I think they lose that one. I mean, Oregon is the only one I definitely think they're going to lose. I mean,
I just think it's interesting to think of what
is probably still their absolute best case scenario, which, for Illinois, that's pretty damn good.
No, and for Penn State, I mean, it's kind of where the Nittany Lions will be at, just with, let's be honest, like a likely loss to Ohio State. You're 11-1. I think you're assuredly in the playoffs at 11-1. Knock on.
Oh, absolutely. It's not even a question. I mean, 11-1, they're getting a home playoff game in all likelihood.
I'm just saying, as far as seedings go, but like at some point, Penn State's going to have some like notable wins, and obviously this upcoming game at USC, it was very important that USC did not get upset by Wisconsin today. Keep that the highest ranked matchup that it possibly can be. But
hopefully Illinois keeps winning and wins all the winnable games in their schedule and stays ranked, so that can keep counting as a ranked win.
Yeah. No, that's what I was thinking. So hopefully Illinois can upset Michigan here in a couple weeks, because that'd be big for the program. But all right, I think we hit everything. I can't think of really anything else. Good win. I feel like this is gonna be one of those, like, and I don't know, maybe I need to read more around, but I think more people are gonna be more upset by, or maybe upset's not the word, but annoyed at how Penn State played than I was. Not that I expected like that type of game necessarily, but I mean, I predicted 35-20, so I thought it would be about a 2-score game, give or take a point. And even though it didn't play it exactly like I thought, I think it was all in all good. And you give Illinois credit for playing well, which they did. But any final thoughts, Tim? Actual final thoughts. I know I said final thoughts before.
Yeah, actual final thoughts. Like I said,
continue to ask you for final thoughts until you have nothing else to say.
Now, win's a win. They get it. They get what should be a fairly easy game next weekend against UCLA, who might be the worst team in the Big Ten. It's between them and Purdue for worst team, but should get that. And then after that, following week is their next big test at USC. So, we're going to find out. in a couple more weeks, what this team is made of again.
Certainly will. Make sure you're reading the website, blackshoediaries.com.
Mhm.
If you're watching, well, you are watching on YouTube because that's the only place that you can watch. Make sure that you are subscribing. Last time I checked, we were at 73 subscribers. I'm checking now. Give me a second. Hold on. Let's see what we are at. This is exciting. We're still at only 73 subscribers. That is unacceptable that we only still have 73 subscribers. When I
Those
wake
are
up
rookie
tomorrow,
numbers, so you got to pump those up.
yeah, that's sad. Guys, once we hit 100, I'll take my shirt off and do whatever show it is. Whether it's maybe we'll save it for a post game show. I feel like, yeah, I'm not going to do it for a preview show. My shirt stays.
No, it's got to be a post game show.
We'll save it for a post game show. Maybe it'll coincide with USC anyway, which is very potentially either good or bad.
That's if these people watching who haven't subscribed yet do subscribe. So
yes, please subscribe if you have not. And yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we will be back on Wednesday to preview UCLA. We'll be back at around 8:00 as always. Tim, it was real. It was fun. Yeah, I would say it's fun. I was gonna say it wasn't fun. Actually, once again, I didn't. That game, as far as like when I think about games,
it was just weird. I guess we'll just say it was weird.
Yeah, I had confidence though, and that's all that matters. But thank you, Tim, and thank you for everyone that's watching. We will see you on Wednesday.